Today we're going to make this Barbie hat. Before we get started, a quick review of camera controls. Hold down the Alt button and drag with the left mouse button to rotate the view. Hold down the Alt button and drag with the middle mouse button to pan the view. Hold down the Alt button and drag with the right mouse button to zoom the view. I will be doing this throughout any tutorial I make, so if you get to a point in the tutorial and you're like, oh my goodness, how is she zooming the camera? Please come back to this part of the tutorial and review the camera controls. Okay, let's get started. First, I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitive Sphere, and click and drag near the center of the grid. Then I'm going to click and drag on the Translate X, Y, and Z fields in the channel box and hit 0 and enter to make sure that my sphere is exactly at the center of the grid. Click on Polysphere and change the radius to 2 and hit enter. Now I'm going to zoom in and right click and drag to get into face mode, and then I'm going to select all the bottom faces of my sphere and hit delete so that I only have the top half of the sphere left. By the way, I'm constantly hitting the 4 key to be in wireframe mode or the 5 key to be in shaded mode so that I can see whatever I'm trying to select or manipulate better. Now I'm going to right click and drag to edge mode, and I'm going to double click on one of the edges at the bottom of my half sphere, and double clicking will select the entire ring of edges. Then I am going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. And we're going to click and drag on this arrow here to make the brim of our hat. Now you can either eyeball it and do approximately what I did here, or you can type into the local translate Z field 0.5. Then I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and do it again and again and again. So each time I'm extruding about the same amount, and then I will change the field that's changing over here. This time it's translate, the local translate Y instead of Z. I'm not sure why it does this. I'm sure it's based on like the normals of the surface I'm extruding from. It doesn't really matter. Again, you can just eyeball it. The whole point is to make a brim with enough subdivisions that we can manipulate the brim later and shape it the way we want to. You never have to change these translate fields. If you don't want to, you can just pull the arrow. Okay, now I'm going to right click and drag to get into vertex mode. And I'm going to select all the verts on the brim of my hat, but none of the verts in the center of my hat. And I'm going to do this by holding down the Control key and the Shift key and selecting all the verts I need. Now for me, the easiest way to know that I have all the verts I want to select, but none that I don't, is to take those verts and move them in some extreme direction. Hit W to get into move mode if you're not already in move mode. So I'm going to take all these verts and I'm going to move them down temporarily to see if any are left sticking up that I wanted to select. And I see that I've missed a few, so I'm going to hit Control Z to undo my move, and then I'm going to hit Control and Shift and select the last couple of verts and do another extreme move to make sure that I have them, and then hit Control Z to undo that. And now I know that I have all the verts for my brim selected that I want. Okay, so now we're going to go over to this menu and drag down to Animation. And we'll go to Create Deformers Lattice, and that will apply a lattice to just the verts that we have selected. And we'll go to the lattice shape and change the divisions to 5, 2, and 5. And it'll give us this kind of grid to manipulate our hat brim points. So now it's time to shape the brim. I'm going to grab these points here and move them up, and these points back here and move them down, just so that the back of the hat brim goes down over the back of Barbie's neck and the front comes up. And then I grab the edge front points here and I'm just going to move them up a bit, and same with the edge back points down here. I'll move them down, and it's looking a little funny, but we're gonna deal with that. So just at this point, eyeball it, make the brim what you want it to be, kind of floppy. What I like about this process is that it makes the hat look a lot more organic and less computer generated. When I'm happy with the brim, I'm going to go to Edit, Delete All by Type History. And deleting history will bake the lattice information into the brim of the hat, and the lattice will disappear, and our manipulations will be baked into the hat, and we'll be good to move on. Now I want to select my hat. The center of the hat needs some adjusting, so I'm going to right click and drag and go into vertex mode, and I'm going to hold the Control key and the Shift key and start selecting all the verts in the center of the hat, basically everything that we didn't have selected before. And I'm going to do that same trick where I move them all drastically in one direction to make sure I have the right one selected, and then hit Control Z to move it back to its original position. Then I'm going to hit E to get into rotate mode and rotate the verts so that it more matches the direction of the rest of the hat, that the round part of the hat rotates up a bit just like the brim does. And then I'm going to hit W to get back into move mode and move those points so that they're more at the center of the hat, so that the center, the round part of the hat is more centered in the brim again. But again, this is all eyeballing, like whatever looks good to you. Now I'm going to right click and drag to object mode, and I click on my hat to select it. And I'm going to go to display polygons, backface culling. Every polygon has a front and a back. And we want to make sure that when we extrude the hat, when we give it thickness, that we're doing it in the right direction. And so we want backface culling displayed, and now you can see that the top of the hat is facing outward and that the bottom of the hat doesn't draw at all. If you look under the hat, you can't see anything. And that means the bottom of our hat is the back of all of our polygons. I need to switch this menu from animation back to polygons. So now with the hat selected, I go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and then grab the arrow, whatever arrow gives the hat thickness in the appropriate direction. And remember, if you move the wrong arrow, hit Control Z to undo that action. As you can see, the different arrows will bring the hat in different directions. Grab whichever arrow works to give this hat a little bit of thickness. Now you can see if I grab that same arrow and drag it in the other direction, I'll actually make a hat that's kind of inside out. And that's what we don't want. We want the polys facing outwards. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that, and then I'll extrude my hat in the appropriate direction. And again, this is all about eyeballing it, giving it a little bit of thickness, and enough thickness that a printer could print it out. And if you want to type in a value, you can type in 0.15 in the Translate Z field here, but again, it's just eyeballing it. It really doesn't matter. Finally, I'm going to right-click and drag to get into object mode, and I click on the hat to select it. I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Smooth. And this will give me a lot more polygons, and it'll average out a lot of the verts I have to create a nice, smooth, organic-looking hat. And that's it. We've made our Barbie hat.